Let's speak with Matt O'Connor. Hello, Matt.
Evening, sir.
How are you?
Hungry.
Matt, of course, is the founder of Fathers... every time I've said that this evening, I've put an S on the end. Founder of Fathers for Justice. And I've said it 1,000 times, of course, Matt. And you are currently, tell me which bit of this I've got wrong, currently on hunger strike outside the Prime Minister's Oxfordshire home.
That is correct. I'm outside Britain's most guarded fridge.
So, I'm assuming there are cops around anyway.
Lots of very heavily armed police officers looking at me anxiously, seeing a very hungry man.
Are there more around than normal because of your presence?
There were on Sunday, actually, when we arrived. There was quite a substantial presence. It goes up and down a little bit, subject to the Prime Minister's attendance to the property. So if he's here, it's obviously swamped. It's a lovely house in the Cotswolds. I was hoping that in an age of austerity, because we're all in this together, I might be allowed in, but obviously not.
That's not going to happen. Okay. And you haven't as yet seen the Prime Minister, because I'm assuming he's not been back to his constituency home yet.
He was here on Sunday. He was here on Sunday when we arrived.
Oh, did you see him?
Well, we saw him passing along with his security entourage, but we'd laid out a very kind of quite poignant memorial outside on kind of like a big roll of purple silk with children's photographs laid out outside. And
so he didn't get out and stop and talk?
No.
Okay. You say there's more than one of you?
No, there's me.
There's just
me. I've had myself and I've had 10 people with me the whole time. So I've got a carer who's got to take Pete, who's here. Hello, Pete. And he's here, and he's got to kind of look after me and do 4 medical tests a day, which is blood glucose, blood pressure, etc., etc.
And how close are you to the PM's house?
About 50 yards.
How many? 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could be literally right outside, but we're underneath a tree. Yeah. Just slightly up the road, which is a very beautiful spot in the world.
So all right, $64,000 question. Why? What are you doing?
2 reasons. One, the commitments the Prime Minister made to us last year, which I think I've touched on with you before, Ian. Commitments to give parents and grandparents a right and also the grandchildren, a presumption of equality, so fathers and mothers are treated equally. But in addition to those promises, which he's broken, and he's betrayed children and families as far as I'm concerned, in addition to that, the appalling and disgraceful comments made on Father's Day, where yet again he demonised and denigrated Dad, saying that we are a nation of runaways, effectively deadbeats, perpetuating the stereotypical myth that somehow the majority of fathers don't care about their children. And it isn't something he can wriggle out of easily, because it's a comment he's made repeatedly over the last few years.
Well, you're not saying, Matt, there aren't bad dads out there, are you? There are some horror stories, you know that.
There are some horror stories, and there are some horror stories about mums. But think about it, Ian, for a minute. It's unimaginable that David Cameron would say on Mother's Day, I want to talk about the feckless mothers who have children with multiple partners and stop their children seeing their fathers. And to make a comment like that, you could imagine Father's Day is a day of actually celebrating fathers and supporting fathers. And the message you could have said was, there are tens of thousands of good, loving fathers out there who are fighting to see their children for the secret family cause. And we, as a government, want to support those fathers, want to be good, loving parents. That's the message. If he was a real statesman, if he was a real Prime Minister, if he was a real father, that's the thing he would have said.
You're saying you made pledges before the election in this area. You've had, because of the many times we've spoken about this, Matt, I mean, you've had all manner of pledges from politicians, left, right, centre, somewhere in the middle, apolitical, of all background, shapes and forms. Yeah. And virtually none have come to anything. Why is that? What's going on here? Is it you that's being ignored, or is it the cause?
Well, you can ignore me, but by all means, please do. I mean, I don't give a monkey's, frankly. You know, if they want to sail past me, if they think it's just about me or about another guy, you know, this is about our children and this is about our families. This is the consequences of not acting upon what we're saying is on every street corner. And we've talked about this, you know, 1 in 4 teenagers is now criminal. We've got a teenager abortion epidemic, a pregnancy epidemic, antisocial behaviour problems. You know, this is just not something to be brushed under the carpet or kicked into long grass. The reason why I think they're terrified of doing anything about it and confronting it is because, as Ian Duncan Smith once said to me in Parliament, he said, tackling anything issues to do with the family seems political suicide. Because after John Major's Back to Basics campaign, if you remember back in the early 90s,
Yep.
Which was seen to stigmatise or label single mothers, ironically, that had such serious repercussions for them.
Of course it did.
Politically, none of the parties felt they could go back and address this issue. So there's a complete failure, systemic failure in the duty of care to actually act on this issue on behalf of children and families. And it isn't just the government, it's obviously the church has failed as well to address the issue. So we're talking about systemic failure right across the establishment to deal with it. And it is appalling, it's disgusting, it's disgraceful that we see in this country seem to have repeatedly failed children time after time after time after time. And our kids deserve better, Ian, I've got 3 kids. And I've got a successful business in London. We've talked about that. I do not want to be doing this. If I could think of another alternative to doing this, I would do. But I feel that strongly about it that I didn't want us to go back to London and breach national security or do the flash bang what a picture type events we've done before. I wanted to do something that was serious. And so what I did was, in my Irish heritage and roots, there's an old tradition that if somebody slights your reputation or fails to honour a promise, you go and you fast on their doorstep to bring shame on that person.
Okay.
And so in the Irish narrative and that Irish tradition, that's what I'm doing.
So are you likely to get a response of any kind?
Well, I tell you what, the response that matters to me, really matters to me, Ian, is the response we've had from families, from mothers and fathers who've been here supporting me over these last few days. That's the response that matters. And I don't have any faith, and I don't see how anybody can place any faith in our politicians in the current climate. They bankrupted this country economically. They bankrupted this country socially with family breakdown. They're obviously intrinsically corrupt, as we've seen, and it's very difficult to place your faith in anybody. But that doesn't mean that we should give up.
All right, Matt, we're almost out of time. Just very quickly, when was the last time you had something to eat?
It was 8 o'clock on Sunday morning.
All right, and how long are you hoping to keep this going for?
As long as I can do, mate. That's the best. I'm just going to dig in and do my best for everybody. It's an important cause, and everybody's been very supportive. My fantastic wife's been brilliant. Pete Nichols here has been absolutely brilliant, and everybody else who's supported what I'm doing. I'm very grateful for their support. So.
Well, we will check in again with you, Matt, maybe on Thursday and see how that is going. In the meantime, fathers-for-justice.org is the web address. I know those guys have had some pretty unconventional methods over the years, from shitting up Harriet Harman's chimney breast to trying to arrest MPs, hanging off Buckingham Palace. They've gone through the Lycra years. They've done the superheroes. There's the new twist on what it's all about, Matt. And I think the crux and the nucleus of what he's trying to get at is a reasonable one, and I think anyone, father or not, would be failing spectacularly in the intellectual department if you couldn't say that at some level you weren't aware of that lack of attention to the father issue in this country. 08717 2233 before we go any further. News headlines with Rick.
Talksport.